name is Terje Wulfsberg. This is a lecture about how we are being kept down by a negative extraterrestrial reptilian influence. Okay. Historically, it's a fact that the culture of the Sumerian, Egyptian, the Mayas and the Incas reached an advanced level within a short time without any natural ability to reach that level. That it was an artificial stimulus that came that made these cultures being able to have advanced information about astronomy, medicine, architecture, and so on. And myths and legends from different cultures that flow in this way, they say the same. Gods came from the heavens and taught them. Quetzalcoatl taught Osiris, Sarasvati, Enki, Vishnu, Yahweh, Baal, among others. And the quicker the pace of the development of this civilization, the more traces there are from extraterrestrial intervention. This is a recent finding from Mexico in 2014, because Mexico, they let the people know what's happening. They don't have a secrecy about extraterrestrials that we have in our part of the world. So we have had an massive extraterrestrial intervention over a long time. And many reliable sources tell that some of these visitors look like us and others do not. And so it still is. Is there any findings? Is there any clues? Is there any substantial evidence behind this? Well, we have several clues, several confirmations. One is the assessment, the top secret report from the NATO made in the 60s. And according to that report, which was leaked to the public by Robert Dean, 4 groups of extraterrestrials visitors have been here over a long time. One of these groups look exactly like us and can walk among us. Some are a bit shorter than us, some are a bit taller, but they look physically like us. Another of these groups are reptiles with vertical pupils. So there's another different type. And Bob Dean became a raving nut, like he says, trying to understand as much as possible about this. After he saw this report, he became very, very, very obsessed with knowing everything about this. And one of his conclusions is that we have been subject to genetic engineering. This is based on his 40 years of experience. And he says that the Anunnakis that are described in the Sumerian texts have been involved in the creation of humanity, and they are still among us. There are also legends and myths coming from all over the world, telling that reptile gods came from the heavens and mated with us. The Japanese emperors used to proclaim that they originated from dragon gods that came from the sky. And the reality of India said that they stem from reptiles called nagas. In Africa, the king said that they originate from the reptiles called Chitauri. And the Mayas and Hopis tell that what they call snake brothers came and mated with them. And the China also has this similar legends. And here are some photos of this connection between the reptile influence on humanity in the past. And one of the many symbols of the reptilian influence is the saint, Saint George, that kills the dragon, like you see here in this photo. But not all reptilian influence has been negative. It's just a small part of it. The Dogon tribe in Africa tells the legend about the Namo, the wise and elevated being that came and taught them and was a very positive influence. Another evidence pointing to genetic manipulation of humanity is the abduction phenomenon. Because people all over the world without any knowledge about UFOs, extraterrestrials, tell exactly the same story. They have been subject to genetic experimentation, and eggs and specimen samples have been taken, and they have been taken during the night and subject to various medical procedures and experiments, and then returned to the bed after 1-2 hours. Usually Greys and reptilians are involved in this. And the sources behind this information, this Bud Hopkins, who was a famous investigator who died a few years ago. And we have David Jacobs, and we also have John Mack, the psychiatrist who died in a car accident in London in 2004. He said that, I'm convinced that this is real. But he was very skeptical in the beginning, because Bud Hopkins gave him some letters and said, read these. These are from people that are giving stories about that have been abducted. Well, he brushed it away and as a fantasy, something that they had thought out, fantasized in their minds. Then he had a private office at home, where he interviewed people who claimed they had been abducted, and he became convinced that it was a real phenomenon. And he said so in academic circles and was frozen out and was degraded. He was very, very negatively attitude in the academic establishment. The Greys, these are famous extraterrestrial species that have been popularized by the Hollywood film industry, making us believe that an extraterrestrial are these with large head and almond-formed eyes. One type of these Greys are cloned workers for the reptilians. They are expert in cloning and genetic engineering. So they make them as their slaves, as their workers. So they obey orders, they are disciplined, they have no emotions, and they have no organs of reproduction. And they live in the symbiosis with the reptiles. Another thing which is quite striking, we have a very strong aversion to and disgust for reptiles. Most people, when they see a snake or a lizard, they get the creeps. Why do we have this negative attitude? Why? And then we are not. We will. Most people will, when they hear a reptilian influence on humanity, their blinders go down. They are not interested in hearing anymore. That it's so. It's something that people want to, not to. Most people and many people don't want to take into consideration, try to find out more about it. But we have some famous sayings that he knows how to twist his way. That's a Norwegian saying. I don't know if it's in English, but that's a reptilian expression. But we have an English expression, speaks with a forked tongue. The reptilians have a forked tongue. That means that the person is very manipulative, sly and deceitful. This are associated strongly with reptilians. And that's another matter, is that the most primitive and ancient part of our brain is called the reptilian brain. And any textbook, medical textbook, can say that. It's instinctual way of behaving. Above that we have the limbic system, which governs our emotions, and we have the neocortex, where the reasoning is taking place. And of course it's much better for the world at large and for every individual to be governed by reason and not by very strong emotions or by, even worse, reptilian primitive instincts. The characteristics of the reptilian brain are they are ruthless, territorial, and ruled by a wish to dominate and a contempt for humans, and greed, sex, and aggression. and this force and competition. And this force and also compulsive behavior. What this force that creates in others, it creates a submission and a fear. Here is Professor Michael Zimmerman telling about this, the reptilian influence on humanity, the Anunnakis, and how this, the Genesis story in the Bible is just a twisted, distorted version of a much greater story, much more. It's just taken parts of it out.
Study the Genesis document. God made Adam out of clay and then took Eve out of his rib, one of his ribs, etc. If you study this document, you discover that it is really a much shorter version of a much more complicated document that comes out of Babylonia and then out of Sumer and so on. Now, these ancient texts give a really complicated story of powerful, non-human, godlike beings actually engineering us, making us for specific purposes. Findings
done between 1889 and 1900 in the heart of this former Mesopotamia, which today is Iraq. Mesopotamia is the name of the area between the two rivers, Euphrates and Tigris. And they had done very interesting findings there, these Sumerian tablets, scriptures, stating that all information about astronomy, mathematics, medicine, music, agriculture came from the Anunnakis, like I said. And Anunnaki, those that from heaven came. And the Sumer is considered also to be the cradle of the civilization. Here is what this Sumerian cuneiform looked like. There's a man who has studied a lot and knows a lot about these tablets, studied them for thousands of hours. And he also has this very unique special background, extraterrestrial contact, which make him a very interesting person and a very reliable person in this information, conveying this information. From early age, Anton Parks experienced a very special phenomena. When there was a strong light there, his consciousness was taken away from the situation, and he saw a person there, an individual calling himself Sam, an extraterrestrial, that gave him information. And this happened again and again over many years. These visions came over and over again, and he wrote them down in a book called The Ages of Eurus, which is a very interesting extraterrestrial history book about extraterrestrial races and their influence on us. What's also interesting is that his information about a race called Imdugud is exactly the same as the Charles Hall talking about the tall whites. He explains that there's so many similarities that you see this comes from several different sources. And he has also translated two books, The Secret of the Dark Stars and Eden, which is about our Genesis. And he also, when he started studying the tablets, he recognized some of the information that he already had been given through these visions. Cloning, genetic manipulation, is described in several of these tablets. And it started 250,000 years ago. And who was behind this? A certain area near the Tigris River near the Kazakh mountain was called Eden. And this area was an area where the Anunnakis that from heaven came with their troops, a warrior race, settled and had a food production. They had a certain kind of grains that was ripened through 2-3 months. They had a lot of different agricultural projects there to supply their starving troops, the troops that came. And they had a fenced-in area called Paradise. And the whole area was called Eden. And what happened is that the primitive humans that were at that time, they invaded the area and raided it, so they had to fence it in. And also because of the microbes and bacteria that they carried made the Anunnaki sick. So Enlil was one of the leaders from the Anunnakis. He wanted obedient slaves. And what they did was that they took the primitive human that existed at that time and genetically manipulated it and degraded him, making a very primitive species called Adam, which had no sex. It was only no male or female, and no able to reproduce themselves. It was a sexless slave, very primitive slave for the Anunnakis, which they used for their purposes. Enki was of a different mentality, and he wanted this primitive Adam clone, which was to be able to develop. So therefore, what he did was he took what they called the rib in the Adam's rib in the Bible was genetic material, blood, and split the sex and made a female out of this. Made two sexes. And he also gave them knowledge. This is called the apple in the Bible. And Enki is this biblical snake that helps this primitive species, this primitive clone to develop. According to Anton Parks, the Anunnaki came to the Earth by chance, and they had a hard time adapting to our world. And they have never stopped trying to manipulate us to lower our frequency, because they don't know love as we are more and more being able to express. So they feel that when we develop ourselves, conscious develops, becomes a bigger and bigger threat to the Anunnakis. So therefore, they are not interested in that we should raise our consciousness. And what he says also is some of these world leaders today have a very primitive and abnormal and very inhuman way of behaving. And we shall come back to that and see why. And the gene is programmed by the gene Abu, the negative reptilians, so they can exactly get this individual the way they want it. And please note that all information coming from Anton Parks is copyrighted, but he has been allowing me to quote him. Thanks to him for that. These Anunnaki reptiles regarded themselves as gods, that it was their right to influence us. There was nobody above them. They were looked at themselves as very special and chosen. And here we see two figures of how they looked, and they have very, very broad shoulders and very, very small. The part of the rest of the body is very small and narrow, and that means that an individual where you have an abnormal abnormality between the upper and the lower part of the body, very broad upper part, is an individual that has a lot of ego. Want to prove himself. So they also are depicted here in this quartz with quartz crystals on their shoulders. They use the quartz crystals in their genetic experimentation. The next picture here is a manifestation of a reptile individual on a digital camera taken here in Norway, from a person who has been very negatively influenced and have suffered badly from their from them. The various lower dimensions is mentioned here. We are in the third dimension, and beyond that is where we go when we die, when the soul leaves the body and stays, and before we take go down again in this world and have another incarnation. And these Ginabule reptiles, they can have a control over all these dimensions, and they can go between them. They can go into our world and out again, and the most of their manipulation comes from the lower astral level, not from they are not in our physical reality most of the time. But they have genetically manipulated 1 to 4 part of humanity into what we call sociopaths, or by another word which is also called psychopaths. This is a genetic disturbance where this individual lacks empathy and conscience. They are ruthless individuals. And they are narcissists. They regard themselves as being above all others. Very, very high thoughts about themselves and what they can allow themselves to do. Remember what I said about the Anunnakis. And they have a need to dominate, like the Anunnakis. They have a lot of similarities between this type of persons and who genetically manipulated them. They are aggressive and like to harass and torment others and seek conflicts and even war. They are manipulative and uses fear, flattery, superficial charm, poor me, different ways, tactics they use to dominate and manipulate the minds of others. And many are fooled by their slick, superficial charm. And they take advantage of others without having any remorse or bad conscience. They have no ability for self-analysis. Everything is the fault of others. And they feel also slighted without any reason. Different sources say that this is from 1 up to 4 parts of humanity, like I said. And they are designed by the negative reptilians, Anunnaki reptilians, to be their henchmen. Between 1 and 4% of humanity has this very, very degraded psyche and have these traits. David Icke says it this way, that reptilians of grey had infiltrated the human society through a network of certain bloodlines, which look like humans but are not. This is his way of seeing it. And of course this also tallies with information about the reptile influence from previous times, which I told about. But it's much more likely that it's a genetic manipulation, because then you can get a much better way. It's a much more precise way of getting the individual with the traits that you want to him or her to have. So they are on a lower level on us and wants to pull our conscious down to low frequencies like fear, anger, worries, death, and despair. And they have transferred the bad traits to these sociopaths, like I said. But the big problem for the world is that the elite at the top of the pyramid, those with most power and influence, many of them have this degraded character. Many of them are sociopaths. And by studying the behavior of the Israeli and US governments, we can see that they are governed by people with this disturbance. Aggressive, domineering, and territorial, will slighted without any reasons and have no conscience or sympathy for others, no compassion for others. And according to a witness that David Icke spoke to, she says about these people that these individuals that are too intelligent, too lethal and cunning to have originated from here. There have been some overrays of beings guiding them from some dimension, and that's precisely the fact. And here is the pyramid of manipulation, the global elite, which has control with the banking, business, military, politics, education, illegal drugs, pharmaceutical products, intelligence agencies, religions, and also the media, of course. The nobility, the blue blood, people that have by heritage special rights without having any merit other than born in the special family. This is a heritage from the authoritarian Anunnakis. And there are 13 families ruling the world. And the most influential of all families are the Rothschilds. And they have a fortune. The Credit Suisse said a few years ago it was 250 trillion. This figure here is $500 trillion. And they are the real rulers of this world. Because they own every central bank, so they are able to, they own the news, the media, the oil and government. They are the real, we have to say about more that, they're the real rulers. Obama is a man which has a very strange character. And he told in 2008, when he was chosen as president, that we should have change. Change we believe in. Change from the policies of George Bush. Hope for a new and better world and for a new way of, much better way of conducting policies, foreign policies especially. Well, this has turned out to be a big lie and made that from the beginning. We have swallowed this with hook, bait and sinker and believed these lies that he told us. Because he is a manipulator and a cheater. And we don't even know his real birth certificate. And he has a very slick, superficial charm, which is there to manipulate, to get his way to the top. And he's very ruthless. I can give several examples. This unauthorized biography about Barack Obama, by what you can see here, says that there is somebody else pulling the threads. He's just a puppet. And the puppet master of Barack Obama is Signe Brzezinski. He has been advisor for several of the US presidents. And he also instigated or started a trilateral commission in the 70s together with David Rockefeller. And this is that trilateral. This means there's three sides: the European, the Japanese, and an American. And this influence is designed to make the powerful and the richest be able to control the policies of the most powerful nations on earth. Especially US policy has been governed by these trilateralists. And Signe Brzezinski has a hatred of Russia. And he is also behind this very negative demonizing of Putin and this aggressive way of US way of provoking Russia and try to destroy Russia in various ways. They tried last year to take the value of the ruble down, and to 13th of December 2014 they had a attack on the ruble to try to bring down the Russian economy, which they didn't succeed in. And Brzezinski says the US shall dominate. The US has the right to dominate the whole world. And they are like an octopus with their arms everywhere. Obama has also said, stop asking questions about 9/11 and trust the official explanation. And there's another thing about Obama, which I will say something about. And is that there was a meeting now at the in 10th of 11th of April 2015, the Organization of American States. This is both North and South America. And it was, there was an idea given from the South American president, Morales from Bolivia, that health care should be a universal right for everybody. This wanted to have this declaration from that meeting. Well, Obama stopped that by saying, healthcare is not an universal right, it's a privilege for those who can pay. So they didn't want to have that declaration. He stopped it.
What about his healthcare plan?
Yeah. That's not for everybody, it's for the rich and those who can pay.
Not the plan he has done now, Obama. Obama just made the universal health care go through in the United States.
Yeah, but he's not interested in this as a universal right for everybody.
But that's what he's been working for.
Oh, this he is always. This is always a double side. He promotes good things, but he does bad things. He is false, true and true. He will not promote healthcare as a universal right because he just stopped it. This is another thing about the U.S. according to journalist John Pilger. Since 1945, more than 60 countries has been invaded or their legal governments have been overthrown. In every case, a big lie was deployed. And Obama's ruthless and a mass murderer, because every week he decides how many people he should kill by drones. And thousands and thousands of people have been killed, from weddings to funeral parties. People that's 100% innocent has never done any harm to anybody. They just an idea. These people might be a danger for us, might be terrorists to call them, and then we just wipe them out. It's totally ruthless. The amount of drones has been increased a lot since George Bush's time by Obama. And he also has a very bad smear campaign against Russia, which I've been already talking about. 9/11 was an inside job. It was not Arabs behind it or Bin Laden. Masterminded. It was not masterminded by Bin Laden. It was used directed energy technology, which is a new technology. You can read about studying Judy Wood's work and the Hutchinson effect. And the steel beams were bent like this, like a strong man had done. And you see this done by this Hutchinson effect, this new directed energy technology, and also made the towers go up in air in small particles, and they had measurements of dust in the ionosphere that never had been measured before, because the rubble was very little rubble. It went up, and would also use explosives. And jet fuel has a max temperature in 825 degrees, and you have to have 1,538 degrees to melt steel. So it's physically impossible that the jet fuel melted the buildings and made them fall down. It was masterminded by the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad. They were the real perpetrators behind the 9/11, together complicit with the US government, certain people there.
There wasn't any airplanes.
There was airplanes, but these, there's a lot of discussion about this. But what looks like these airplanes did was that they shot a missile into the building with a depleted uranium. And that was also why did you see these enormous explosions. But there are a lot of information about this. But I will mention these 3 books, but the best book, which really points out the brains behind it, is Christopher Bolin's book, Solving 9/11. And he was forced to leave US in the 2008 because of harassment due to his work. And what the FBI was, they arrested several Mossad agents after the 9/11, and 4 Mossad agents were seen celebrating the event, and was reported to the police because people found their behavior very strange. And what they said later the same year, and they was just taken moved out of the country and got back to Israel. What they said on Israeli television later that year was that they were there to document the event. But how can they document an event? That means that they knew about it. And there was also a software company which is strongly linked to Mossad called P-Tech, which had their software installed on all computers in the US, where and military and government, which were able to override their system, and so nothing functioned normally on that day, like the warning about the planes and so forth. And there were 4,000 Israelis working in the World Trade Center, but only 3 of them were at the work that day. All 4,000 was forewarned by ODIG, or instant message service.
And the security company that worked there, you know who was chief of that? It's a security company.
Yeah, that was a relative to George Bush.
His brother.
Yes, yeah, Bush, yes. Mm. And here we also see how this work, this false flag operations, like you see here. Benjamin Netanyahu is another key player in this behind 9/11, and he urged for a war on terror already against the enemies of Israel already in book written in 2006. So he coined the word war on terror. And Israel was made by terror. That way they got rid of the Palestinians and took their area. There Israel was founded in 1948, and they terrorized the Israelis. The Israelis have terrorized the Palestinians ever since. Like you see here, that a few years ago, they used white phosphorus over Gaza. That now stopped burning. It's a tremendous war crime to use this, pouring it over children and women and everybody. They have no conscience. They are absolutely, totally ruthless. The leaders of Israel. Another thing that most people maybe believe from the mainstream media was that Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011 by special American SEAL Navy troops, which is also a big lie. Here we can see from CNN, 7th of October 2002, that Karzai, the president of Afghanistan, bin Laden is probably dead. Fox News said in 2001, report bin Laden is already dead. BBC said in 2002, bin Laden probably dead. Benazir Bhutto, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, which was killed in 2007, said a few weeks before she was killed on Al Jazeera, the Arab TV channel, that bin Laden has been dead for years. And here we saw the last genuine photo of the real Osama bin Laden. And all these tapes that was made in 2002, 3, 4 were fake tapes to promote him as the head of and mastermind behind the attack on World Trade Center, and to uphold the war on terror. And we can see how this manipulation in 2011 took place when Obama had a he wanted to be more popular among the Americans. So he did this stunt to increase his popularity. They said that he had jumped his body at the sea, just a fantasy story. And you see here these photos, manipulated photos taken from the film Black Hag Down. They have no real evidence that he was that they killed bin Laden, because he was already dead several years before. Another big lie that Americans have done and fooled the whole world is that they captured Saddam Hussein in 2003. Well, according to one of the masters in our spiritual hierarchy, the Americans knew exactly where Saddam Hussein was when this invasion started in March 2003. And just 1-2 weeks after they started this brutal war, they killed the real the real Saddam Hussein. So he died. He was seen taken out of a house where he was, which was attacked by the U.S. troops, and died shortly after. No media was allowed to interview or take any photos of the man that was captured, because the lies shouldn't be discovered, of course. All information, photos included, all the photos come from a single source, and that was the US military and US intelligence. Then there was a complete media silence, blackout for more than a year. We didn't hear anything about this. And the reason why, I should say that shortly. But Michael Schodowski is a leader from this global research. And he says, reported circumstances and the photographic evidence of his arrest in a dirt hole, enshaved with thousands of crisp $100 banknotes and 2 AK-47s and a pistol on the side, have all the ingredients of a carefully planned media scam, and that was what it was. Here we see a short video showing how another side of this scam, because this film, which we see now, is shot several months before they said they captured the real Saddam Hussein. One of the ways we can see that is that the dates on the trees here are still ripe, and they are ripe in August, September. This was said to be taken in. It was in December that he was captured. So the film has been made several months before. We also see that the small hole in the ground was not possible for a man, overweight man, over 70 years old, to come up and down such a hole. So you see that this was a fake story from the beginning. What they did, that they took and made a hybrid. They made a special photo of using the original Saddam Hussein parts of him, and with this new, amalgamated with this new, with his cousin, which they had caught. And here on this photo we see that they have kept his moustache because, of course, he should look like Saddam Hussein, the real Saddam Hussein. Here we see two photos of the real Saddam Hussein, and he has normal teeth, but this cousin has not. His lower jaw is protruded, while this is not on the real Saddam Hussein. We can also see the eyes are part of the body that doesn't change much with the years, also used for identification. And we see the eyes of the real Saddam Hussein and his cousin, that this is not the same man. And also they chose to keep his beard all the time because, of course, people should not understand that this was not the real Saddam Hussein. What they did is it's what's through MK Ultra and the CIA technique used for depatterning and repatterning. We have some information about this. History Channel made interesting documentaries about this, but we don't know the techniques they used in the recent year. But we know that in the 70s and 60s they used electroshocks, frequent electroshocks, given over a long time, thousands of them, together with drugs and sleep deprivation to erase the memory of a person. So a person that had gone through that, one woman was interviewed, she couldn't remember that this had happened to her. She couldn't recognize her own children. She didn't know her own name. They called it depatterning. Then there is a repatterning where the new identity is programmed into the person. And the person doesn't know that this has happened to him. So his cousin became Saddam Hussein and was killed as Saddam Hussein, hanged in 2006. Completely innocent man. This is totally ruthless. It shows no compassion. This is evil to the core and typical of this psychopath mentality. Conclusion. Manipulation is easy when you control the source, when you have no interference and confirmation from other independent sources. And we form your perception and fool you into believing our versions. It's called perception management. And all major media works for us, and only our version of the truth is being broadcasted. And this news are being repeated again and again with big headlines and forced into the brain of people, and they accept it without they having a chance to reflect if this really is so. It's a way of manipulating our consciousness, which is used a lot by mainstream media when they convey US propaganda and lies. We are being duped. Here is an interesting quote from a man called Andreas von Bülow, which knows a lot about intelligence agencies and how they work. And he wrote in the name of the state how the criminal behavior of the intelligence agencies. And he said 95% of the work of them, of the intelligence agencies, is deception and disinformation, which is widely propagated in the mainstream media, created an accepted version of events. And we can see this example already, showing how this is done. We are being kept down. 900 million people are starving, even there is more than enough food. Nearly half of the food that's produced in this world today is thrown away, never eaten by anybody except rats and birds. It's a tremendous waste when people are starving. It's a big crime towards humanity. Food containing GMOs and harmful additives, the geoengineering and the chemtrails, which is taking place, the manipulating of the relation of the weather. But they also use these HARP facilities. Norway has one of them. The cell phones use frequencies which are the most harmful and cancerous. And 12 different research projects lately state that this causes cancer. Repeated exposure to cell phone radiation every day, half an hour to an hour, 5-6 years, you have a tremendously increased 400% increasing of the possibility of develop a special type of cancer called acoustic neurinoma. The global surveillance which we are under, all Google and Facebook and Gmail are totally controlled and surveyed. Mainstream media feeds us disinformation and propaganda, keeps us in total ignorance, or give us lies, according to the examples I've given. We use the sources of energy that contaminates the planet and harm our health. And information about alternatives are being kept from us. Vaccinations has a lot of bad effects. They are promoted as being conducive to health. Lies are being told about alternative treatments like homeopathy, and drugs are being advocated. And the Agenda 21 and the plans to reduce the human population to under 1 billion. And our history books are full of lies. And the secrecy is regarding extraterrestrial visitations which we have on our part of the world. Well, now we come to the real interesting part of this. And this is the solution and the change that has to come to change the situation. We must understand the game. It's a good thing. The truth shall set you free. And our consciousness must be lifted to a much greater degree from the lower chakras and up to the heart. Living from the heart. And it's so simple thing like friendship. If there were friendship among all peoples everywhere, an attitude of friendship towards everybody, we would have no wars. We wouldn't allow people to live in starvation and misery. And we would have a totally different world. And therefore, extraterrestrial civilization visiting us says that friendship is something which you have to cultivate, because it's the way forward for humanity, to see us as one humanity. Not that we have a new world order where some elite governs us and we have nothing to say. That doesn't mean. It means unity in diversity.
Community.
Yeah. Balancing the left and the right brain also is important. There was a man, a real badass, called Daniel Brinkley. And he had been in over 1,000 fistfights before he was 16. And he was also in US, hired by the US as a sniper to kill presidents or people all over the world which had a policy or made which the US didn't like. But this is an example that there's hope for everybody. When he was struck by lightning and was clinically dead and was taken to the morgue, and they saw that the blanket was moving, they saw that when he was out had a near-death experience, he was told by these light beings that he met that we are powerful spiritual beings meant to create good, and not necessarily in bold action, but in acts of kindness towards others, because it's the little things they count. Because they are more spontaneous and show who you truly are. And we are mighty spiritual beings. And love is treating others the way we want ourselves to be treated. So spiritual development is more kind, helpful, and unselfish. And this is all kind of service which is done because it's a good thing to do, not because somebody should give you a pat on the shoulder. And all type of meditation promotes the development of our consciousness. We all have a special meditation called transmission meditation. This year, in October this year, a man who has had contact with extraterrestrials for over 40 years and who started what you call Mission Drama together with his brother, Charlie, his name is Sixto Pasvels, and he comes to the conference we are arranging in Norway in October this year. In December last year, he was in Puerto Rico, and he was given a message from two extraterrestrials. One is from the moon of Jupiter called Ganymede. His name is Oxalc, and also Sampiak. And this message says that the shift toward the positive will every second become more evident. The 24 elders of the galaxy have decided that in the middle of the new year, in June, July this year, the White Brotherhood will use all means available to expose to light much that has been hidden, which will make the masks fall of those who have been deceiving, manipulating, and hurting humanity. So 2015 will be a very interesting year indeed. Another very important factor in the change that we are going through, what's coming, is that 40 of the masters in our own spiritual hierarchy have plans or are going to work and be among us openly in our world. This process has already started. One of the masters has taken up his place in London, another in New York, Tokyo, Darjeeling, Geneva, Moscow, and Rome. And this externalization of the hierarchy was predicted in a book called, by that name, written many, many years ago by Alice A. Bailey, which was given information from the master Gerald Cool, DK, which she wrote down in these books. And Maitreya, the leader of the spiritual hierarchy, has been interviewed now over 100 times on television, but he's not telling who he is. But the day he will do that is called Maitreya's Day of Declaration. And on that day, we will experience something that has never happened before. There will be a linked global media broadcast by television, and everybody will see his face on the television, with possibility to look at the TV at that time, and they will hear his message inwardly, and everybody will translate it into his or her language.
When did you say it was?
When
will that be?
The date has not been decided. It depends on what humanity is going through these coming years, but it's very probable that will happen within 2017. And there are certain, on that day of declaration, Maitreya will send out his energy. It will be like I embrace the whole world, and we will feel it physically. And there will be hundreds of thousands of spontaneous miracle healings taking place all over the world. And also we will have this half an hour telepathic broadcast. He will not say anything, but we will hear his word inwardly. There are now 4 star-like spacecrafts in our atmosphere, 2 on the northern and 2 on the southern hemisphere. And they act like the Star of Bethlehem 2,000 years ago. Because when we go into New Age, when a new teacher is introduced to humanity, these special star-like spacecrafts are being used. When they found Jesus, the 3 wise men, this spacecraft, star-like spacecraft, stood over Bethlehem so they could find him. Now these are seen. One of them is often near the full moon. One day, one on this side of the moon, and this on another day on the next other side. And here are 2 photos of them. There are another one, which we also here in Norway see in the south, laying low on the horizon and changing colors all the time. Very, very, very strong. And you can see them, these 2 can be seen when it's almost full daylight and when it's overcast. So they are not out in the cosmos, they are in our atmosphere, just a few thousand meters up. And here is a recording of one of them, made on the 4th of December 2010. And this recording is so spectacular that media in Norway was interested in this, and I had a discussion, I made this recording and had a discussion on the local radio with the astrophysicist, and he said this is Venus, because they always give an explanation like one of the common celestial objects, which is not, obviously is not. But people tend to believe in authorities and swallow their explanations. Too often this happens. There are another interesting phenomenon which can be seen on buildings, and these are called circles of light. This is special reflection coming from some windows, and they are circles coming from a square window. And this is made by spacecraft which has sent out some form of energy which has changed the molecular structure within the glass. You cannot see it with your eyes, but when sun hits such a glass, it gives off a totally different reflection from what you normally see. So here are 4 examples of this. And you can see from this one on the lowest here from Bergen, Norway, that this one, you see one that's a normal square, and the others are perfectly circular, higher up on the wall. There's no explanation, scientific explanation behind that can explain this. There has to be a cooperation between the masters within our own spiritual hierarchy. These are perfect. The masters are not masters over us, but masters over themselves, because they have no personality, and they have only group consciousness. They have perfected. They have divine wisdom, divine will, divine intelligence, divine love. So they have nothing to learn on this planet. They have stopped incarnating here a long time ago. They are elder brothers. They are gone before us in evolution and are here to oversee the evolution of this planet and all the kingdoms of this planet. And our extraterrestrial friends that are here and oversees our evolution also, and try to help us without infringing our free will, these 2 groups are cooperating. And when all people with goodwill that understand the situation also cooperates, we have 3 mighty forces working for the good, which will change this world. And the reptilian negative influence will disappear totally. One of the masters in our own spiritual hierarchy says in the year ahead, in January, people everywhere are waiting for change, and change they will have, whether welcome or otherwise. Have no fear, for all is for the best. It's a very interesting magazine called Share International, which you can subscribe and support by subscription. And has an article by one of the masters every month. Somewhere toward the end of this year, people should see the beginning of 2015, beginning of the change, positive change in various areas of the world. And in March, he said, the time immediately ahead will puzzle many. So quick will be the changes, political, economic, and social, which will manifest, and so frequently when these changes occur. And what is predicted by Ron Paul, a well-known American politician, is that the dollar will collapse within a short time, because the US borrows money, $200 a day, and $200 million. I don't know the exact figure. Bare ta det vekk. But they are printing money and creating an unsustainable situation, which no government has been succeeded in doing. All have tried to do the same has gone down. And the trust in the dollar will disappear, and then the value of the dollar will collapse. And also another interesting thing that can take place now in May is that the Greece will stop paying their debt to the International Monetary Fund and the EU, and the EU will collapse, and Greece and other countries will start leaving the European Union. That will also be a big instigator for change. Financial breakdown will come, because through that a new avenue will open for humanity, and that's necessary to have a breakdown before another big direction is being taken by us. And we also have much more wisdom, people with much more wisdom and can guide us in a different direction that we are heading now, because we are heading towards destruction. If we don't change our ways, we will destroy this planet for the future generations.
What is this new avenue?
The new avenue is global cooperation and sharing of the world resources, so everybody get decent lives, even if they don't have any money. Money governs people's lives in a total destructive way today. If you don't have money, you can't even afford to buy food for yourself and your family, and you have to starve. Money governs over life and death. So there will be also this day of declaration when we will feel a togetherness, and all humanity will experience the same, will also have a very good effect on our, and also because Maitreya will appeal to our hearts. He was the Lord of love, and his tremendous love will galvanize us into changing this world for the better for everybody. There's a nice mantra which you can use either by yourself or together with others, which is called a mantra of unification. And I think it's a good idea to end this lecture with this mantra. It's a good thing, this is a mantra given by Master DK, one of the masters in our spiritual hierarchy. And it goes like this. Before I start, I will say something. A very wise thing to do after this mantra has been read is to close your eyes and visualize that a stream of rose-colored energy goes from your heart and envelops all humanity, goes to everywhere in this world and all life. In this way, we will create this is a help to create a new consciousness which is needed and sorely needed in this world. And it becomes more powerful if several people holding hands, closing their eyes and visualizing this together. The mantra of unification. The sons of man are one, and I am one with them. I seek to love, not hate. I seek to heal, not hurt. I seek to serve, but not exact due service. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all men love.